Yes, the reading in the church Bibles starts on page 90, Exodus chapter 32, verses 1 to 15. When the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and said, "Come, make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him." Aaron answered them, "Take off the gold earrings that your wives, your sons and your daughters are wearing, and bring them to me." So all the people took off their earrings and brought them to Aaron. He took what they handed him and made it into an idol cast in the shape of a calf, fashioning it with a tool. Then they said, These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt." When Aaron saw this, he built an altar in front of the calf and announced, "Tomorrow there will be a festival to the Lord." So the next day the people rose early and sacrificed burnt offerings and presented fellowship offerings. Afterwards they sat down to eat and drink and got up to indulge in revelry. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go down, because your people, whom you brought up out of Egypt, have become corrupt. They have been quick to turn away from what I commanded them, and have made themselves an idol cast in the shape of a calf. They have bowed down to it and sacrificed to it, and have said, 'These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt.' I have seen these people," the Lord said to Moses, "and they are a stiff-necked people. Now leave me alone so that my anger may burn against them and that I may destroy them. Then I will make you into a great nation." But Moses sought the favor of the Lord his God. "O Lord," he said, "why should your anger burn against your people, whom you brought out of Egypt with great power and a mighty hand? Why should the Egyptians say, 'It was evil intent that he brought them out, to kill them in the mountains and to wipe them off the face of the earth'? Turn from your fierce anger, relent and do not bring disaster on your people. Remember your servants, Abraham, Isaac and Israel, to whom you swore by your own self, 'I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, and I will give your descendants all this land I promised them, and it will be their inheritance forever.' Then the Lord relented and did not bring on his people the disaster he had threatened. Moses turned and went down the mountain with the 2 tablets of the testimony in his hands. They were inscribed on both sides, front and back. This is the word of the Lord.
And so they quickly forget the faithfulness of God. And they're not in slavery anymore at this moment in time. They're not running away from an army at this moment in time. Don't get me wrong, I'm not sure desert living is what I would choose for myself. But compared to like Egyptian dominance and tyranny and running from a murderous army on chariots and having to like face a great ocean piled up at the side. Like, can you imagine waving to the fishes and going like, what is going on here? You're just experiencing the supernatural in a whole different... They've almost got comfortable at the bottom of this mountain. And then they lose sight of God, just like that. And then they do something interesting. They say, right, well, this fellow, this bloke, he's left us. I don't know where he's gone. Forget that God that he represents. Let's make our own. And they get together all their possessions, their riches. It's all their jewellery. They don't say, oh, get some wood and we'll carve it. Like they take everything that they sort of own. It's a sort of nomadic society. Like they don't have houses in the same way. You know, they don't have like trust funds and things set up in bank accounts. Like there's not that type of wealth. But what they had, they then gave, melted down, so it's no longer theirs, and created something by their own hand to worship. And so they gave their material wealth, they gave their things, they sacrificed them, if you will, and constructed something with their own hands and gave it worship. And then we carry on, and further along we find out that they then go to that thing, the idol, for the things that they were expecting to get from God. They've created something where they'll go instead of going to God. Interesting thing that struck out to me as we were reading that, and that is going to lean into some of what we're going to say, is that the next day, they said, right, this is the day we're going to worship the Lord. And they rose from their beds at the same time. And what I want to say is they structured their day around worship to this idol that they had made, hoping that what they could create could sustain them better than God did. There's some interesting parallels there, I find, in my own life. And maybe you, as you sit there, think, hang on a minute, maybe that's an interesting parallel in mine too. But God is not overly enthusiastic about this experience, and he says, Moses, what is going on? My people, your people, they've given up, they've created false idols, they're worshipping. I've had enough. Do you know what I mean? I'm sick of, to be fair, you can't hold it against God at this point. Do for these people, and they just, within an instant, reject me, turn away from me. Again, I feel like there's a minor resonance in my life. We did Thanksgiving this morning, this evening, we're hearing stories of even like standing on a beach 2 years prior, coming from Kenya, going back, hoping to be back, that chapters closing, new ones starting, new life, all of this. God is constantly on show for us. How quickly do we forget? We say, go to this other thing instead. This thing I've made, that gives me joy. It is a fascinating story, and I think we hear the language of the Old Testament, golden calves and Mount Carmel and lightning and thunder and stone tablets, and we disconnect. But there's something profoundly similar to our own context, even in the desert in the Middle East, as 2,000-3,000 years ago. So, the theme this evening, what we're going to explore is what is worship then? What is worship? If they were worshipping, they were still worshipping the Israelites. There's nowhere where it says they didn't worship, but they worshipped this false idol. So what is worship? Worship is something that the Bible doesn't shut up about, essentially. It teaches us from almost verse 1 what we should be doing and what we shouldn't be doing in our worship to God. The Israelites, who were God's chosen people, the people we read about today in this passage, and the people we're often encountering in the scriptures, were a people called by God to worship. But they were called to worship differently from the rest of the world. The Bible doesn't present us a world free from worship and then all of a sudden the Israelites pop up and the concept of worship comes into being. Worship existed long before and continues to exist and will continue to exist potentially long after the stories that we read about and the stories that we create. It is a natural part of what it means to be a human. In Isaiah, it speaks about the people I formed for myself, that they might proclaim my praise. The psalmist has identified that we were created to worship. The idea that God created people to proclaim his praise. And as I was reflecting on this passage, some of you might have caught a glimpse if you've got me on Facebook, but I was just really struck quite in a powerful way about how God isn't just revealed in sort of scripture or in each other or something, but like the whole of creation is worshipping. Everything was made to worship. I was thinking, is that right? If we're made to worship, like everything was made to worship. In Psalm 96, let the heavens rejoice, let the earth be glad, let the sea resound, and all that is in it. We haven't even explored all that's in it, by the way, so that's remarkable. Let the fields be jubilant. And if you've walked on any jubilant fields recently, listen carefully. I often think when you go past a sunflower field, that might be a jubilant field. And everything in them, the voles, the little newts. Let all the trees of the forest sing for joy. Through the climate crisis, we've got these fancy things that float above the planet, that like video thing. The satellites I don't understand. A lot of you probably have brains big enough to understand how and why satellites work. When my 3G goes a bit dodgy on the East Coast, and yet we've got things in space sending us high-def pictures, I'll never understand. But there's a video that was taken over the Amazon rainforest, and it measured the levels of CO2 in the air. So you could see all this CO2 swirling. And over the area where the Amazon rainforest was, it would like pulse as the trees inhaled the carbon dioxide and released oxygen. As they photosynthesized, the sheer volume of CO2 in the air would just decrease, but it was like pulsing. So one, it was like a heartbeat. But two, you could almost see the breath that creation had. I get excited about these things. But it really was remarkable, and we're so blessed to be able to, the Israelites didn't have a satellite in space showing them these things, but yet they knew it. The psalmist knew it. Let all the trees of the forest sing for joy, and let all creation rejoice before the Lord. Creation, that is the created world, but also the things that God, everything made, exists to serve and worship the Lord. There's a very old video by Louis Giglio about space. Some of you will have seen it. Not going to talk about it. Go watch it. It's phenomenal. By the end of it, you're like, good grief, I feel small, God is massive, and everything is worshipping him. When I look out at the sky on a sunset, and we have some good sunsets here, when I see the sea, I watched the surfing on Saturday, and there was waves that I don't even want to go near, and they're just like smashing into them on purpose, it would seem. And people go swimming in winter in the sea. I don't understand that. But we crave to experience creation. And the auburn sky is a real thing for me that just reminds me of God's goodness. But I've actually put down here, that's quite an arrogant perspective, that this is all for me. How good is that? Look what I get from all this. The reason that creation is so magnificent is it is simply worshipping its creator. Psalm 66 says, all the earth worships you and sings praise for you. They sing praises to your name. And I said this week on Facebook, but we catch a glimpse of the glory of God by bearing witness to the worship creation offers back to its creator. Does that make sense? I'll say it again. We glimpse the glory of God when we bear witness to the worship that creation offers back to its creator. Before I came here, I was doing a placement at the Message Trust skateboard ministry. It was very exciting. But I had a friend who was kind of suffered with anxiety, suffered with a lot of things, suffered with doubt, concerns, and he's an amazing dude. And he was like, Joel, let's go climb a mountain and camp on the top. And I was like, okay, let's do it. Now, I was thinking big hill. I wasn't thinking mountain, okay? I was like, we'll walk up a couple hours to the top of a big hill, like the Dales, I don't know. No, we drove to the foot, I don't know the name of it, but it's like the third tallest mountain in all of Wales. And I was like, in Vans, nonetheless. I was in Vans, like a jumper and a backpack the size of my head. And I was like, Ben, I was not prepared for this experience you've invited me on. You did say mountain. I should have took you at your word. Anyway, when you're in North Wales, you will be struck by how few things men make are present. And so we climbed up this mountain, and as you can expect in Vans, it was awful. Just a genuinely terrible experience. And I said about 3G, I didn't have much signal, so I texted my wife at the bottom of the mountain. I said, just setting off now, love you. And then obviously no signal for the rest of the trip. It was like a 4 or 5 hour slog, and I'm in Vans, and we got near the top. But I was still texting my wife on the off chance she received a message, and I might receive one back. And there was a point near the top, I didn't know we were near the top, because mountains are big. And I was like, my mates, they're like, you're right, Joel. And I kid you not, the wind was like battering me completely. I was like, oh my gosh. And I was on all fours, just almost like a caricature. You can imagine, just like, oh. And I looked at him and was like, I'm going to die. I'm going to die on a mountain. You've brought me on a mountain and I'm going to die. And I text my wife at that moment, I don't think I can do this. Sent it, right? Didn't think anything of that message because I was too focused on the challenge that was ahead of me. Anyway, he was like very encouraging. He was like stood up, not out of breath, just completely loving life. He's like, come on, man, we're nearly there. I was like, you said that 4 hours ago, Ben, come on. And he's like, no, we can do it. You can do it. Come on. And I was like, all right, I'll do it. So I crawled the remaining like 300-400 meters up. We got to the top, and it was just, I wish I'd have printed the photo off now and put it on the screen, but it was genuinely remarkable. It was a clear day. We'd peaked at sunset. Good gracious. It was like this vast, because it was such a tall mountain, all you could see was valleys, mountains. There was no building, no artificial light, just the sun shining on this creation. And there was like a haze, you could still see far, but there was almost like on the tops of the mountains, you could see this like, and I was like, where am I? And I was like, this existed so far before I got here. And it will go on so long after I'm here. The sun will continue to do its thing. The mountain, the wind that nearly blew me off the mountain doesn't move that mountain. And I was like, this is a real profound moment where I was like, wow. God is incredible. He made this, fashioned it with his hand. And then a mountain that's just not, I was like, anyway, you get it. I could keep going because it was very awesome. I was like, this is remarkable. We then proceeded to not have tents, but actually have these bivy sacks. Not a clever idea. It wasn't even summer. It was like spring. It rained all night. So I was there in like essentially a glorified sleeping bag with a bin bag over it. Like this at night, being like, remember the sunset, remember the sunset, remember the sunset. I had to wake up. Well, obviously I didn't, because I never went to sleep. I woke up when the sun rised, and I was like, wow, amazing, beautiful. But it was like 4 a.m. And I had church this morning in Warrington, so we climbed down the mountain, which was, again, very beautiful. Got to my car and drove from Wales all the way back to Warrington, and then rocked up at church about 5 minutes before it started, and people were like, are you okay? And I was like, I was just up a mountain and we slept, and he was like, are you okay? Like as if I was on drugs or something. But it was just a real interesting moment. The whole time, hadn't checked my phone, and the last message I sent to my wife was, I don't think I can make it. And then she heard nothing all night. Isn't that outrageous? Good grief. She was not happy with me then. She was like, you made me think, I thought you died on a mountain. I didn't die, and it was an incredible time, but just a reminder, all right? Don't text your wife text like that without a follow-up message, okay? But I say this because there wasn't a guitar in sight up there. Some lunatics probably do, but there wasn't. There was no guitar. There was no amplifier. And yet, worship was taking place on the top of that mountain. It was in my heart, but it was also in the sky, in the heavens. Worship cannot and should not be boiled down to a four chords on a Sunday service. It must be more than that. It is more than that. All of creation is created by God and for God, and we were too. And when the sky demonstrated its beauty, it is simply living out the purpose it was placed on the earth for, and it brings honour to God. I want to say that tonight, that worship is when the creature, that's us, the thing that was created, brings glory to its creator. Creation spends its entire existence worshipping the Lord, and my challenge is we should be no different. We'll speak about it in a few weeks and in more depth, but Romans tells us, Romans, plural, to lay our lives down as a living sacrifice, and that is our right and proper worship. We're not on our own, but we belong to God, and so as we live our lives, it is right and proper that we lay them down and do all things for his glory. Our life isn't ours to begin with. We're just giving it back to the Creator. Now, I said that we all do this. We all worship. Maybe we don't all worship God like this, but we all worship something. And I did have a video, and I'm quite glad for the sake of time that we don't have it, but it's also very old and grainy. But I also thought, I was thinking about this, and essentially, I want you to think of a moment where, does anyone genuinely put your hand up? I feel like I'm in school. Put your hand up if you've ever been to a musical concert. Musical concert? Few people have been to a musical concert. If you've been to a slightly more classical musical concert, you might not have shared the same experience that I'm about to allude to. However, the same parallels can be drawn. When you're in a worship concert, I can tell you that there would have been three almost behaviours you would have encountered, right? A whole heap of people coming to one place to focus on one thing, for starters, to hear what this person was offering. But what was interesting is, and I don't understand why we do it even to this day, but you'll see that when people are jubilant in their watching of a concert, particularly a high-octane one, their arms will be flying in the air, and I genuinely don't know why they're doing it. I'm like, they've not been told to do that, but there's hands in the air. I think they're trying to reach for what they can't have. They're trying to just catch the jacket of the person singing, that maybe they'll be able to sing better. I don't know. But they'll throw them, and then if you notice, the real fans, they'll be weeping. Their favourite song will come on. They'll be screaming, I can't believe it. Can you believe it? I can't believe it. Wah! And then they'll scream this song out awfully. Like, they ruin it for everyone around them as well. Like, I've paid money to see this person sing, and I've not paid money for you to sing. They're singing this song. They probably don't even, sometimes they get the words wrong. That's annoying. But anyway, they're screaming the songs out. They're crying. They're not bothered what people think about them, because they are just in the moment worshiping, singing their songs to this person. Classical music, I don't know if you've ever listened to a classical piece and it moves you to like tears. These normal human encounters evoke something in us that was put there in the start. And football is probably the most heinous example of this experience, but you will see a whole group of people put on a different outfit, put on their clothes, put on their outfits, go to their massive hall, their huge stadiums, sing songs for an hour and a half, 2 hours, hurl abuse at the other side. Like, they'll just lose all, semblance of self-control, screaming at the ref. The passion on display in a football stadium, often I don't experience that in a church. And I don't want to experience all what I experience at a football stadium in a church. Hear me right? But what I'm trying to say is, we all live lives worshipping something. Crazy sports fans are often a good image, and I don't need to go into it too much because you can all see it. You think of the Euros, you think of the pain on Ronaldo's face when he misses and all this, and the pain on the fans. Some people enjoy that pain more than us, but I'm not going to comment. What I'm trying to say is, proper worship is not these things, but these things are worship. People spending their money, going to an area, singing their hearts out, jubilant. There's a song, what's it called? I'll become undignified singing, dancing, wailing, crying, all for this one person that is simply only that, a person with a microphone that happens to have a gift in singing. We all worship, we just might not all be worshipping the right things. Proper worship is to give our lives to God, and when we give our lives to God, when we give our lives to something else, when we order our priorities around something and someone else, we make that person or that thing an idol. I've called them covert idols that creep in and lead us into a life of apathy. And you'll feel it. You'll feel flat. Sometimes you'll feel depressed, because those things that we have made idols were never meant to give us the things that we're using them for. I think of video games in my life, right? To take it away from the mass hysteria, right? There's a new game came out. I got very excited. So I scheduled time in with a bunch of my friends to give 4 hours of my evening to play this new game because it had just come out. I watched videos before I played this game to learn more about the game before I played it, so that when I played it well. And then after I left, I texted those same friends all day about how great it was to play that game with them and when are we going to do it again? And then I thought, well, flipping it, Joel. When was the last time I got that excited about the presence of God? That excited about worship? That excited about meeting with my friends to read my Bible? Do I get excited? Oh, mate, I'm excited to see you later. I've been reading the passage. Remarkable. Oh, did you? Oh, amazing. Get there. We have our tea. We love tea. Sip of tea. That's amazing. How good is God? Let's pray about it. Let's pray for one another. That's so good. We pray for each other. We feel God's Spirit fills us again. And we go out and tomorrow, oh, mate, you know that thing we were talking about where God told you, be strong and courageous. I had this conversation and this happened. And isn't that, when we order our lives around a thing, it can become an idol. And for me, it identified that video game was an idol. And you say, well, that doesn't make sense. You weren't worshipping. You weren't singing, praise be Call of Duty. You weren't doing that, so that's not an idol. But actually, I'd ordered my life to give my life to that thing instead of giving my life to Christ. I've got a bit excited here. Sorry, I might be going over. But when you finish 4 hours gaming, you may not know this, but you don't feel very great. You might have enjoyed yourself, and I did, but it didn't feed my soul. It didn't, because the joy, the freedom that I thought I would get from the game is what I'm supposed to go to God for. Do we get the image? When we build something, when we do something, and we go to something for something we're supposed to go to God for, it does not satisfy. Like the calf in Exodus, it did not satisfy. It didn't provide what they needed. They made something they thought it would, and it didn't. Not only does it make us feel flat, but it grieves God. Only Christ can offer what we need. When the Israelites stopped looking to God for their hope and their provision, they quickly spent all that they had, took their wealth, offered it to a human construction, made sacrifices and praise to it, hoping that they might get what they needed from that calf. And sometimes we hear this story and we laugh. What silly people worshipping a calf. My challenge this evening is, what is our golden calves? What do you orient your life around, and what can you not get enough of? What do you prioritize over your family, over rest, over gathering in community? What do you sing songs to even? Because if it isn't Jesus, then we might have some idols that need to be addressed. Worship is our lives' orientation towards something. And that includes praise and worship, but it isn't limited to it, and it's so much more than that. And so the big question that I'm hoping we can explore during these remaining 5 weeks after this week is, how can we identify those idols, those covert idols, and how do we reorient ourselves back to worshipping the one who deserves it, Jesus Christ? Now, I'm not suggesting here, as I come into land, that we all become monks, okay? However, this series will hopefully encourage us to understand better what worship is, to grasp that we're all worshippers in some way, and then take practical steps to reorient our lives, to restructure our lives back to Christ so that our lives honour Christ. And we can use our gifts, our talents, our passions for Him. That's what we were given them for. But when we use them just for our own gratification and we leave God out of the picture, that's when we have our issue. So stick around for the next couple of months when we go through this. But tonight, as we start this journey, I'm going to invite the band to come up now because we are finishing. And they're just going to play. But what I want us to do is, I'm not going to say anything, we're just going to listen to some music. And I want you to, for like 3 minutes, reflect, pause and reflect. Ask God now in your spirit to reveal maybe where we have created idols in our lives or fallen into the worship of the wrong things. And as we spend some time in the quiet of our souls to meet with God, just allow Him to speak deep into your soul. And no one is exempt from this, but also no one is too far gone from that reorientation. It might be an opportunity tonight to re-invite Christ to the centre of your life, to destroy that idol that you might have built. And then I'll close with a brief prayer and we'll sing our final song.